Hey, what's up? So you think you have problems? You do not have problems. This week, my recommendation is not a movie, it's not a TV show, it's not a series. It's a YouTube channel. It's called Soft White Underbelly, which it's run by a guy called Mark Laita. He's a photographer. He does these fantastic black and white thumbnails. They are awesome to look at. And he also does these photographs that are shown somewhere as each episode ends. And so this YouTube channel has all these interviews of normal people going through stuff. You have drug addicts, you have refugees, you have people struggling with mental health, you have you have pimps, you have prostitutes, you have war veterans, you have homeless people, you have people who have done something to transgender, you have people body transformations, you have people who have either gone through so much, people who are going through so much, or people who've been normal, ordinary people. You see an ordinary person and then they tell their life story and then you realize that they went through something that changed their life. Everyone has a story. But these are incredibly life transforming stories. I mean, you think you don't have problems. Let me tell you, you do not have problems. You don't have issues. Go to that channel, go through all the interviews, you'll understand what I'm talking about. I mean, there's an episode, I think this was 2 years ago. He interviewed a guy who had half of his face blown off by a shotgun. Unfortunately, he passed away after a few years. I think it was also announced in the channel. You have all those kind of. You have a guy who's totally transformed his figure. He has actually split his tongue, and you learn why he does that, and then you understand where he's coming from, and then it somehow makes sense because of who that person is. You have all these people who are functional addicts. You've heard of fentanyl, right? Fentanyl, the drug. You don't know. You actually, because when it's announced on TV, it's not a big deal. But if you see the people who are actually going through it and them actually telling you about it, you actually see the effect and you understand why you cannot just let it go. And this is not the scientific factor, it's not the technicalities of what drugs do. This is the human. You see these people, you see what they're going through, you hear them talk about who they were, who they are, and what their possible end might be. Now, what Mark Laita has done is that he has tried to help most of these people, and so he also does this follow-up. So if, for example, if you go back 2 years, you'll see some people appearing more than like 3 times because he goes back and does follow-ups. You see some people improving, you see some people going the other way around. And that's why I highly recommend this channel. If you think that life is hard here, for example, Kenyans, you think that you're having a difficult time, it's important that you see this YouTube channel. It's important that you see these stories. It's important that you see these experiences. So this is not like a documentary. You see, a documentary is usually very fancy. You cut to something because they want to be entertaining. A documentary it's focused on thrill, the thrill of the story that they're telling. This is so grounded that because they're interviewing like real people who have real issue, you can actually relate sometimes. Especially, they have some really basic stories that we all go through, but just small things make that their stories totally different and actually has an impact on you. Apart from all the stuff that I've seen, the latest episode was about a mob. A guy who was a gangster back in the 70s and 80s. And so when his story is telling his story, you go like, yeah, it's familiar. I've seen this in movies. I've seen all the mafias who come out to talk about. There's nothing unique about his story. So I'm just listening for the sake of those added small bits about the 80s and the 90s and the life, him going to jail and his father, because he followed his father's footsteps. And so things change when he starts talking about the 2000s, when he gets old and his dad is dead, all the other people in his whatever are dying. And so, because life now has become so hard for him, because he cannot do what he used to do, he has no skills. So he has to become an informant for the police. And so the police accept him and actually put him under witness protection. So he's living good. And I think to myself, yeah, that's cool. But he mentioned something very interesting that changes everything. For me, I had like that moment of, damn. He mentioned that he will not be buried with his father, next to his father. He'd rather be buried next to his grandparents. Why? Because he became a police informant. And for them, and the dad who's dead, He thinks that the dad who's dead is angry with him because he became an informant. You know, he started working with the police because he was so into the life back in the 80s and 90s that now he feels that a dead father is so angry with him, though he's dead, that he cannot accept him to be buried next to him, you know. And so he's like, when he dies, he wants to be buried next to his grandparents. So it's moments like that about these interviews or these documentations that make me want to recommend this to you, especially if you feel that your life is hard. I highly recommend that you go through the channel, go through the shows. He even has this playlist of different kind of things. You have refugees, you have sex workers, you have drug addicts, you have pimps, you have prostitutes, you have war veterans, you have homeless people, you have mental health, you have reproduction issues, you have some philosophical discussions. He had the guy who trained Michael Jordan in basketball. So you have those inspirational moments. You have a plethora of interviews, of information, of life lessons. These are books, literally, because you go through people's life and there are a lot of lessons to learn in this particular channel. So give Soft White Underbelly a chance. Go through the channel, see if there is anything that you can learn from the channel. I'm sure there is.